So yeah, my name is Immo Garlichs, and I would like to share some experiences with the Ethereum blockchain with you today. I've been already working on some projects, and after a brief introduction about myself, who I am, I would like to share that experience. So the platforms I've built together with my team, and the architectures I used, the pros and cons, why I actually used those architectures, and in some cases why you shouldn't use them, or in other cases why you should use them. And then I will share my learnings and the challenges of those projects with you, and then the next part I will summarize my philosophy, so my learnings out of all these projects, and based on that my model on how I approach new ideas and how I'm deciding whether I'm doing it with a blockchain or not doing it at all, or maybe without a blockchain. And last but not least, we will have a Q&A session where you can ask me about the project itself, and also if you have some more questions, maybe about the new ideas you got this week, you can also ask them to me. So, who am I? That's basically summing up my life. I'm born in Wittmann, a small town north of Germany, and started studying at Frankfurt School in BIS, and been working for Deutsche Bank, and then for a bit I've worked for Apple in Ireland. And now, since last year, I'm working with Ethereum and working for Union Investment as an IT in-house consultant for online transaction systems. So let's get started with the projects. The three projects I brought to you today is a marketplace, an Ethereum fund trading platform, and a ticket platform, which you all already guessed probably by the name, Ticket. And the first project was a marketplace. Before a year, we had the task in the university with the whole semester to start with Ethereum. So to learn what is Ethereum itself, what can you do with it, and had the task to build a marketplace. And whenever you get started, you think, what would be the best use case? And we decided to build a marketplace where you can simply upload your goods, which you want to sell. So just adding some details about it, and then you can see what items you're currently having on the platform. And the end user then has got the opportunity to contact you via the traditional ways, so email, telephone, all the stuff which is not in the blockchain, but the buying process is what actually works on the chain. So when you're just simply clicking on buy, you've got the opportunity to say, well, I want to buy it, and then both parties get a notification. You've got to prove that you bought it for that price. The rest is all offline. But now the big question, which you might have already guessed by edit profile and all the other stuff and log out. This was the first project, and as often when you start with something completely new, use stuff which might be not 100% suitable, or so you just have the traditional web browser, either on mobile or on desktop, which you can use. And for the end user, it's a completely seamless experience. You can directly use the blockchain without MetaMask. But as you already know, you already have experience with Ethereum. That means that you're not in control. So user experience might be a bit nicer, but you're giving away the point why you decided to use a blockchain. You want to empower the user, give him the chance to have control of his goods. So what you need here, we started with a Ruby on Rails web server, because there were so many libraries already existing last year. But whenever a new technology arrives, only the fact that there is an existing library doesn't mean that you can use it, or that you should use it. So especially when you start and haven't done a project before, consider using the most standard thing you can find. So what we know in Ethereum, the Web3 library directly, no extra stuff, just directly use it, because otherwise you need to do some ugly stuff, such as coding an extra API, need to do all the key handlings, and have a high security risk. I mean, you all probably try to, or already did, buy some cryptocurrencies over the typical marketplaces. And the risk you're having if you're storing them centrally is like empty GOX with Bitcoin. You all probably heard about that. You can lose everything because you, as a provider, especially with some platforms, you just don't want to have the power about all data of the user. The user itself should decide and should have all the control about it and nobody else. So you just have the traditional architecture then behind it, a Go Ethereum node and a smart contract, which is actually controlling that. So to summarizing that project up, the biggest learnings and challenges were, first of all, which is still kind of a challenge, finding resources on how to actually use Ethereum, how to learn it, how does coding work with Solidity. That was something which quite quickly leads to not very good decisions or even bad decisions. And the biggest thing which you should always consider when you're thinking about a new idea, building decentral is completely different. If you want to really have a decentral platform, then you need to separate between that content which the user should have directly and maybe a central part, maybe some analytics or something which you have to have at your server. The blockchain is not replacing everything. It's just an addition, not more. And based on that, place blocks where they belong. And the question how to answer whether a block is really belonging at a specific spot is quite simple. If it wouldn't be a specific information, if it wouldn't be within that specific transaction, what would be the risk? If Amazon, for example, wouldn't have your nickname or something like that within a transaction, who cares? They have your payment details, they have your address, but there's so much more information in traditional web applications we know today where it is really, really tempting to put it in the blockchain, but you should never, ever do it because it costs money and resources of the whole network. And the whole point of a blockchain is to empower everybody to use it and not just a few players. So let's move on to a completely different approach I've used in my second project called Ethereum trading. Ethereum trading was or is a platform which allows you to trade different cryptocurrencies, so the values itself, not the currency behind it. And you can invest in them, so you can just top up your account and can then, if you want to, if you think like, well, I'm so good at investing in the various currencies, I want to open up my own fund. This program allows you to create your own fund, so to decide how much Litecoin, Bitcoin, or Ether should be in a specific fund. So you can configure that, and the user can buy your fund on a completely decentral basis. So the whole currency transfer is made and controlled within the blockchain, and the whole investment. There's no depository bank or anything needed between it. So you, as an investor, have minimum fees here, and this platform is as decentral as possible. And how does a completely decentralized platform look like? Kind of simple. You have your normal web browser with MetaMask, which you can directly use, and this browser. And you're accessing the files on a completely local basis. So if you're thinking completely decentral and just offering those features which a user really needs, you can even do it in a way where you don't need to have a central platform for all the images, or which might look nice but don't add an additional feature, and can just give them to the user, and he has full control. There's no script which can be changed or something. The user can look into the source code and can directly see what goes to the smart contract, what is happening here. But if you're using that approach, you can finally give the control to the user instead of just trusting in, well, I'm clicking this button, if I press on buy, then I'm really buying and not selling or transferring my shares to a completely different person. You can see what's happening by completely building decentral. You have directly can see what is going to the smart contract, and the only thing, even in that fully decentral approach, basically it's as decentral as possible, is the external information. As you might already have experienced, Ethereum can do loads of things, but it can't handle, sadly, but for good reasons, external informations. So in order to get the pricing from other platforms, I had to build an oracle, which is then consuming a REST API of crypto compare, and then pushing that into the smart contract via a normal transaction. And the rest, so rebalancing of a fund so that you always have the same composition in the fund, all that stuff is completely within a smart contract, and this makes investing easier and especially way cheaper. But there are so many applications where you just need additional features, where you want to have them, where you want to, for example, add nice diagrams based on the data you already have in smart contract, where you want to do extra calculations. How can you do that? And that's what I show you in my third project, which is called, well, we'll let you wait for a second. Let's first talk about the learnings here. I said that you shouldn't do everything in the blockchain, and especially you should think about how complex is what you're doing. Is there maybe a highly analytical process you're doing? So you're having maybe millions of data sets you want to have and crawl. Is that really something a blockchain should do? No, it should be done externally, because you shouldn't store it in the blockchain. Always store at the minimum you really need. So always consider what is transaction critical and what is not. And also then there are things or information which may look nice and make the application more decentral, but are just not critical, and then for that reason should not be in there. Like, for example, in that application I was considering losses and winnings to show them to the user, but it's not only whenever you buy something, you might buy some more stuff and maybe have taxation, and all these things can be getting quite complex. And then still making those transactions via a blockchain is just really expensive and also takes away resources from others. Because just consider all the ICOs we had in the past. There were just a few hundreds of people who had the chance of using the network just for making their investment. One of the big things of a blockchain is democracy. Everybody can use it and should be able to use his or her application whenever you want to. But if there are just some people who, or some companies, some applications, who are using up all these resources, you're blocking the whole Ethereum world to others. You don't want that to happen to you, and as always, you first need to be nice to others, that they're nice to you. And in programming, that's basically one way of being nice in Ethereum. But I've said, there are sometimes points where you just need some central bits in order to integrate into the world we already know today. And that was my third and biggest project, called Ticketh. Ticketh is a platform which allows you as a host, so like Philip, oh, where is it? To organize an event and then to sell all those tickets and to share them with your friends. So maybe you can't make it, but a colleague can make it. How can you do the transfer? And then as an organizer, you're standing there, maybe someone sold a ticket twice, and then you're having two people and should decide, yeah, who should go in now. That's a problem we have fixed with TICF, because the ticket itself has a unique record on the blockchain, and you're having basically a QR code where you're signing a secret which the host also knows, and then can re-encrypt so that only one person can really have that. Today you just have those paper tickets and have no chance in giving somebody the opportunity to identify you on a unique basis. So with TICF you could kind of replace Eventbrite or maybe AD ticket. Those would be the opportunities. And because we used a very special architecture in this case, we were also doing something really wonderful, which I'm kind of proud of. We were the first ones, now it's currently in certification, to integrate this little box. You may have already known it from advertisements. We made it happen with our architecture to integrate the most new technology, voice technology, to let you just ask Alexa to get your tickets, or what upcoming events are there in your area. So basically, in the future, you could use this platform to maybe have a village or something where people can know, well, this is going on, this costs this much money, and you can directly ask this device there. So this is kind of, let's call it normal technology. But how is that possible? How can you even integrate other sources into reading from your contract? At the beginning I said, always try to use the standard, so Web3. And again, Web3 offers you one very, very nice thing. It's coded in JavaScript. And because it's also coded in JavaScript, you can just really easily set take the Web3 object and then put the standard REST services on it. There's no gap between those technologies. There's no adapter you need to code extra. You can just implement in normal frameworks such as Express, install that one, just type one line in the console, install the other one, and within just a few lines you can just integrate whatever you want. So what opportunities does that give to you? A blockchain will never replace companies completely, or at least not all. You also have other systems. You have an ERP system, you have a CRM system. Those departments who are working on that probably don't know blockchain so far, or how to integrate a blockchain. But if you, in your project, in your field, in your software, are integrating standard APIs such as a REST API or an XML service, you give them the opportunity to use known good. Technology they already know. Just integrating it in their normal service platform, so if you are selling via a marketplace your goods, to directly have the data in their normal system and to start producing something, or to send out advertisement based on that. All those things we have today is using this architectural approach possible without letting the user lose control. In this case, you're having the smartphone app, which can consume that service, but it's still having full control, because you can do signing from a smartphone. It's just a JavaScript library without even a light wallet. You're just doing the signing there, so you, as a user, just have your standard phone without tons of gigabytes you need to download. You don't need status or anything on top. You have the control about your private key, your public key, and can just sign like your purchases and can simply read through that interface from your smart contract you're developing in the end. And on the other hand, you're still having the normal let's call ourselves the traditional Ethereum user, so using your web browser with MetaMask or Mist. and you're always in control from any device you're using, from any client. You as an end user are the only one who has control. There's no middleman who can change anything. The worst thing which can happen with this architectural approach is that somebody just throws away your transaction. So the vendor who's maintaining the REST API. So worst case scenario, you want to go on a concert and it's almost sold out and you don't get the ticket. But there's no chance that somebody could take away your money. So just taking the money and running away, because it's still totally secured. It's already signed, the transaction, whenever it arrives here. So you sign here, it's completely encrypted with your private key. There's no chance in changing it without making it invalid. So you have just, with this architecture, a normal product from there on. So other parties don't need to know blockchain. It's just your project which needs to integrate that. And you have everything in there. So what have I learned based on this big project? Building a REST API based on Ethereum is way more simple than I thought. I thought you might have to have at least there some sort of cryptography knowledge or anything. But for those of you who already used Web3, it just doesn't feel like it is cryptography used in the background or something really complicated. It just feels like a normal JavaScript library. It's just a bit slow in transaction execution, but besides that, it's just so normal. And building a hybrid architecture has some sort of challenges, sure, because you need to consider what should I put decentral, so to the user in a smart contract, or what should I maybe do off-chain. So, as I mentioned earlier, what is maybe better to keep in a data warehouse. And based on all these projects in the past, this is sort of my model of how I work whenever with a feeling like, that would be nice if you could use it maybe with a smart contract. The first thing I'm asking myself, and which is really the most important thing, what is the value of a blockchain in this case? Is it just that you want to use a blockchain, that maybe your business department tells you, yeah, I was on this nice convention and I want to use blockchain now? Well, this is not a benefit for your business. And whenever you've got the feeling that there is a value, that you can actually make something more efficient, then you should consider just writing down a brief concept, just really briefly. So just taking like 30-40 minutes, writing down what you've got in your mind, and then based on that, based on those raw facts, you then have to specify what exactly is the spot within my big application. So whenever you've got the concept and your architecture, you just take your architectural map, like, okay, these are the areas I'm having in my application, and then you can mark it or whatsoever. Just thinking like, okay, a blockchain would be there nice because there I'm having some really critical information, such as I mentioned earlier, an online shop. A postal address would be really important to know. Maybe somebody thinks later on, well, I've changed my address, but well, didn't do it before that order, so who cares about that change? And whenever you're through with those 4 steps, you should just take a step back, do something completely different to make sure that you're still focused when you're working on it, and then go through that cycle again. All in all, that cycle should really just take like 90 minutes or max 2 hours. Because if you're working too long on something, especially when it's something exciting like new technology, sometimes it can lead quite quickly to thinking it's nice because you've put in so much time now. So when you're taking a step back, maybe you think different in like a couple of hours, and then again, always start by step one. So always think again, is it still a fact that that benefit I plan to integrate is really a benefit, or did I maybe in the next few steps found out that the area which was the reason why I started is just not really a benefit. That can always be the case, and that's not a bad thing. Sometimes it's better to just stop working on an idea because it's just not the best idea. So based on all of this, I was creating some do's and don'ts, and one of the most important ones is always thinking like, what can you do on-chain? So what is highly critical to really work with your business model? What is highly critical to that? Put that on the chain, and everything else. Is it important? Then consider to maybe put it in a traditional database, or in some cases even you don't need the data at all. You just want to have it because you want it. Can also be the case. So it is just Ethereum is made for securing transactions, to bringing and to getting rid of uncertainty. So if somebody's just changing his or her profile picture, well, yeah, sure, that's kind of nice, but that's not really a transaction you need to secure. It doesn't make you lose money. I mean, if you're a model agency, probably, but for most other businesses, no, not at all. And if you've got the chance, you're already having a running business or plan on using an ERP or CRM system, and that's almost the case for any company, think of building a traditional API layer. So what I mean with traditional, something like REST, XML, all these things which we already have. Use that to make it easier for other departments to use what you created. Because otherwise it can get quite quick that somebody thinks like, well, yeah, we started this project, but we can't use the data they're creating. We should do something really like magic, and the easier you make it, the higher the acceptance of the other departments will be. And now coming to the don'ts. Using it as a data warehouse, as I mentioned like a couple of times, is the worst thing you can do. You're just blowing up the blockchain to a bigger and bigger thing, and every single client needs to save it locally. And you don't want other people to waste your storage, and vice versa. You don't want other people don't want that either. And if possible, and we made that mistake in our first project too. Sure, passwords are traditionally stored in a central database where you authenticate your users. But if you've got the chance, and in 98% of the cases or even more, you have got the chance to give the control to the user, leave it at the user, because that's the reason why you did start blockchain as an end user. You want to have control about the data you have. And last but not least, and that's like really way more critical than all the other points I've mentioned. Even if you're a business department or yourself, you really want to use a blockchain somewhere, never ever ruin the first impression. So just keep it simple and only implement a blockchain if it's really worth it, if you really know that it can make something more efficient or even more smooth or whatsoever, but never ever use it only because it's cool. And how can you ensure that? Best thing to do is just look for the smallest piece where it really makes sense to use blockchain. Don't think too big. On a long run, always, sure, but if you start with something like that, it's new. It's for many people, it's kind of scary. because it's changing all of them. It's changing everything they built before. I mean, if you look in the financial industry, there are so many companies who still run on COBOL or Pascal. Yeah, blockchain is so far away from that, and it's kind of similar doing the first project of blockchain to doing the first agile project in a company. If you use agile where it doesn't belong, and maybe some of you experienced that before. I experienced it, and we tried agile in a bank, and just some sort of agile, and then just cutting down like the models, and at the end, if you fail with such a project, you just have the reputation of, well, agile might not be suitable for my company, and if you're just doing blockchain because it's cool in a certain use case and not because it's useful, you can maybe ruin the opportunity for further implementations based on blockchain. So keep it simple there and use where it belongs. And I would like to thank you very much, and would like to close this session with a quote of Steve Jobs. Technology can either be beautiful or should be invisible. Always keep that in mind whenever you're designing your application. So if it seems like too technological with a very simple product, maybe you have to change something. Thank you very much.